Hi there, this is Craig. I'm just cutting into the beginning of this podcast to let you know that this was the first podcast we've recorded, and at the time I hadn't yet brought a microphone, so you'll notice some of my audio is a bit of a mess. We tried to edit out some of the poor audio to make it easier to listen to while keeping as much of the conversation as we could. But at points it sounds a bit like Tobias is at a seance and I'm talking to him beyond the grave. If this is the first of our podcasts you listen to, know that this is the only one where we have such audio issues. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
Podcast, the movie podcast. We are discussing film. We are showing each other films. We are showing each other films that neither of us have seen. Some films will be shocking to our listeners out there that neither of us have seen. Certainly since both of us have been to film school and done this, tried to do this for a living.
Film school is a bit overselling it, I think, but yeah.
I mean, you got to give yourself credit, I mean, certainly when you've got nothing to show for it, you may as well big it up.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, sir, let's get into it, I guess.
Yeah.
Have you got anything to say to our listeners before we get started?
Not really. Well, yeah, I think so every episode we're going to try and show each other something that we haven't seen.
Yes.
In this episode, we're going to be doing The Godfather Part 2, which I've seen. It's a super favorite of mine. Although actually rewatching it, my opinion has changed actually, but we'll get to that. Yeah, because I'm spotting some things that I didn't think about before, but we'll get to it. I mean, this is a film that you haven't seen. Now you have.
No, I hadn't seen it prior. I had seen the first one, and I really like that film, but it's a hard slog to get through. And I was much younger when I watched the first one, and I had put off this second one for an awful long time. But now that I'm in my 30s, it's like, all right, you grow up, watch the fucking Godfather. So yeah. Oh, are we PG-13 in this pod? Should we bleep that? Maybe we should bleep that.
We'll consider bleeping things. I don't know. We'll
figure it out. Yeah,
if you're old enough to talk about The Godfather Part 2, I think you should be able to withstand a bit of swearing here and there, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough observation. Yeah. Fair play. Well, let's get into The Godfather Part 2. We should have a jingle here. We should get a jingle.
Yeah, we'll play with that as well.
We could do we could do one now. Like a boom.
I think that's enough. We're gonna use that one. Yeah.
All right, let's do that. That's the one from now on. All right, everyone. Welcome to the pod. Boom.
Done.
It's like countdown, isn't it? It's like countdown. I love it. Right. All right. So, Godfather Part 2. It's pretty good. I'm not sure why I'm surprised. It's pretty good. But I don't love it like everyone else seems to love it. My dad is fuming with me that I didn't have more nice things to say about it. I mean, it's good. It's just not as good as the original. The original's way better. For me, anyway.
Yeah. Like, I think the thing about The Godfather Part 2 is it's a little bit experimental and it's very perfectionist and it's got a lot of realism that Hollywood didn't have at the time. And it just set another layer, like another stage for I don't know, like how good a film can really be, like in terms of how it looks, in terms of how it's done. It raised the bar a lot. But yeah, I was saying just before we started there, like I feel that my opinion has changed a bit because I think that people big it up so much that it's like if you don't like it, it's like, oh, what's wrong with you? You don't understand film then, do you? But like looking at it now, yeah, with everything else that we've seen, it does have some faults that kind of make it feel a bit funny. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, because I'm with you really. I thought the sort of most impressive part of the film for me, when I'm looking at it sort of from a filmic point of view, coming at it from a film student sort of attitude, I thought it was filmed beautifully. Like I thought the flashbacks, I felt that it was very authentic and they were very realist in sort of, how it was approached in the direction. But I personally am more interested in sort of formulaic, not formulaic, a more formulistic mindset in direction. That's what I sort of prefer. When you notice the direction, the flair for direction a bit more. I suppose Quentin Tarantino's made that a sort of guarantee for people to look for, like, where's the flair in the movie? And I sort of felt that it was, it just felt very real, like, it felt very grounded, and I think it really achieved in that respect.
Yeah, yeah. I always think like I think that I'm actually not sure if The Godfather Part Two is in the story actually comes from the same book, or if it's just the first book, the first film comes from the book. Because my wife was telling me that I've read the book. I don't remember any of this, so I'm not sure if that's completely true. But I do feel that when you're watching it, it feels like it's quite literally an adaptation of a book, and it feels like Francis Ford Coppola was being really like honorable. Like he really wants, okay, this is what happens in the book. This has to happen. It has to be like this. And like
Well,
when you read a book, the books don't always go in the same kind of formula as a film does. At least the way that films are now done today. So it feels
well,
like film books can sometimes have these tangents, can't they? And I feel that
well. I
the
think
book.
you've hit on something there, because let's not forget that the guy who wrote the screenplay is the author of the book,
Oh,
Mario
really?
Puzo. Isn't it? Isn't that his name, Mario Puzo?
Yeah, I didn't realize he was a screenwriter as well.
Well, oh, I've got a really interesting analogy for you, like little story I heard years ago. Apparently, Mario Puzo, he'd never written any screenplay before, and then when they adapted The Godfather, and he won two best screenplays or two best
Hmm.
adapted screenplay Oscars, and he's like, okay, so I've made two films now, won two Oscars, maybe I should give this screenwriting thing a crack. And he went out, he bought a screenwriting book, and the first thing it said in the book was, go watch The Godfather. So, like, he was like, oh, so I already know how to do it then, I guess. Like, I'm not sure how true that is, but I heard it a while back and I thought it was brilliant. So,
Yeah,
yeah, uh, I know he adapted it from his, I know he wrote the screenplay, but I don't know how much he changed. This is a thing we probably should have researched the book for this. Let's
we
be
should have.
honest.
Yeah,
Yeah. But look, we're
if
jumping head first into it. So,
yeah,
we're still learning, listeners. We're still learning. Hopefully it's an interesting learning curve for you as well.
maybe one day we might revisit this, and maybe we'll slaughter
Maybe.
our own original analysis. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, speaking also of the way that the film is made, I was thinking, and I'm not sure if I'm correct, but I think The Godfather Part Two must be one of the earliest prequels. Do you know about how the first film was made? How much trouble they had to get it done?
Well, see, I'd heard a story that the first two Godfather films were filmed as one movie, but it doesn't really feel that way after watching it, you know.
Uh,
Um, so I don't know how true that is, but if
I'm
you
not
know,
sure about that, but I know that when Francis Ford Coppola first tried to make The Godfather, he
hmm,
had massive problems with the studios because they didn't want to give him all the things he wanted. For example, like uh, they were saying, let's film it in the 70s because it was the 70s at the time. So, no, no, no.
hmm,
Francis Ford Coppola was like, we have to film it in the 40s. It has to be like this. It has to have this style. It has to feel this certain way. We have to follow the book like this. And there was even times where, at one point, the studio didn't want Al Pacino to play Michael, and
hmm,
they had to call up James Caan and say, "Hey, James, do you want to come in and do a screen test for Michael?" And like they almost lost Al Pacino and almost had James Caan as Michael. And like, but like, yeah, I think apart from James Caan and Marlon Brando, Francis Ford Coppola wanted everybody to be Italian. They had to be Italian guys. They have to look a
hmm,
certain way and know the background. You know what I mean? Like from
yeah.
that New York kind of area. So like, yeah, they and like, yeah, a lot of work. He struggled a lot, and then yeah, it came out pretty good. Yeah,
I
so it's
mean, look,
interesting.
Pacino really is a great actor. He really is. Um, this is not his best performance, though. Neither of the Godfathers for me. He is brilliant. He is
Yeah,
brilliant. Don't kill me yet. Don't squeeze me yet. But like, I don't think these are his best performances. You know, I think Dog Day Afternoon is
Dog Day
really
Afternoon is very
stellar.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I don't think he's ever given a better performance, and
It's
I'm still
interesting
waiting.
it's very interesting you say that because they say that his performance in Godfather Part 2 is his best performance.
Well, you know, he is brilliant. He is brilliant. You know, when he, you know, towards. I mean, look, I think we'll get into the details of the film toward, you know, later in the pod. But you know, I just remember like, you know, when he's like, I know it was you, Fredo. I know it was you, and I'm like, oh God, like he's so good. And then like also the bit where he's where Diane Keaton's trying to take the kids, and he's like,
Hmm.
he's trying to reason with her, and he's like, but don't you know me? Don't you know I won't let that happen? And like, and it's basically he's being nice to her, but like you can say it's a threat. Like it's so
Hmm.
he's being super nice. Like I love you, I want to be with you. But the words he chooses, it's very like, but you know what I'll have to do to you if you take
Yeah.
my children away. And it's like, oh my God, like he's yeah, no, he is brilliant in this movie. He really is. And I love the character arc of Michael over these two movies. It's a great
Mm.
character arc. You know, I think the sort of modern character arc to that is kind of Breaking Bad. You know, Walter White going from like, you know, a sort of respectable guy to, you know, big hotshot, like powerful gangster dude. You know, so that's like, you know, I kind of see this. I mean, don't get me wrong, Michael was always like, you know, part of a crime syndicate. But, you know,
Mm.
in the first one, like he was trying to stand up on his own. You know, he went to, you know, he fought for his country. You know, Vito had big plans for him to have his, like, to equate his own power, his own legitimate power, not this
Hmm.
manufactured power. You know, I think they say something about him like maybe being in like politics or something, or a lawyer or something. So they have a guy on the inside or sort of thing. Um, but
Yeah, it's
still, like they saw him as like, you know, standing on his
the
own
clean
rather
one.
than with the family, the clean one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, look, why don't we go into the, you know, break the film down? Like I've got a bunch of notes here, and it's sort of like a puke note draft, I guess, of like it's just me puking all my thoughts as I have them while I'm watching.
All right,
Um,
go
I've
for
got
it. And
there's a few things to go over. Number one, the first fucking thing that I wrote down, fucking Adrian from Rocky's in it. And I was like, oh, it's Adrian, yes. Like, and I'm like, how the hell did I not remember that Adrian was in The Godfather? It's like I can't remember the actress's name, but she was in 2 Godfather films and
oh,
6 Rocky movies.
are you talking about Talia Shire?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So this is it. She was in the Rocky franchise and the Godfather franchise.
Hmm.
Dude, she was like the 1970s equivalent of Jennifer Lawrence or what's her name? Scarlett Johansson in all of these big Hollywood franchises. It's mental. I was so angry with myself that I'd forgotten she was in it.
Do you know
Uh,
who she's the mother of?
what, in real life? No
Yeah,
idea.
Jason Schwartzman. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Well,
He's a
isn't
Coppola.
I was going to say, isn't Schwartzman like the cousin of Sofia Coppola?
Yeah, they're cousins, I think. Yeah, I think Talia is.
Ah,
I think she might be the sister of Francis Ford. No, I'm not sure actually. There is because she's a fair bit younger than him, I think, or maybe I'm wrong. But they're related. They're all part of the Coppola family.
oh,
Big
well, no
family.
wonder. I mean, well, this is it. I know that Sofia Coppola is like a kid in this or something, but she's brilliant. Like, and there's so many films of hers I'm a massive fan of. I think she dwarfs her dad maybe a little bit because
Mm.
I mean, look, I'm not going to hate on Francis Ford Coppola, but like, besides this and Apocalypse Now, you know, I mean, that Dracula movie wasn't good at all. The one with what's his name, Gary Oldman as Dracula, Dracula 2000, and Keanu Reeves is playing English in it. Oh, it's dreadful.
I
It's
don't even
terrible.
know if I've seen this.
Oh, it's not. It's really not worth watching. It's not good. There's some nice. Don't get me wrong. There's some nice like directorial flourishes, but overall, it's not a great movie.
Mm.
Uh, but it is a great. Dracula is a great character. So maybe you want to watch it just for that. But I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan. Yeah. So this movie, Godfather, that opening, they've got like a sort of cold opening with like a title crawl, or not a title crawl, not like Star Wars or anything, but
Yeah,
they
a little bit.
basically give you a little backstory. And again, it was something that I felt was unnecessary, something that probably bled into the movie from the book, because you probably would have written that in the book, but I
Hmm.
feel like in the movie you didn't really need to do that. I felt like the audience would have caught up. If you just show a kid called Vito, you know, in 90, early, late 1800 Sicily or whatever time it was. Uh, yeah, like the audience would have caught on to, oh, this is a flashback to Marlon Brando as a
You know
kid.
what you could have even have done? You could have even have started it from when his mother is taking him to Don Chichi, I think it is, and just say,
Mm,
please, like you could explain it right there. You could cut a
exactly.
fair bit from the beginning and just say, just please spare my son. You've killed my husband. You killed my oldest son,
Mm,
and then you would get it. You wouldn't need much of that beginning part,
yeah,
really.
exactly. Exactly. I just didn't feel like it was necessary. I felt like I really liked the opening, but I just felt like the backstory that we're getting at the beginning just, yeah, it just felt a bit cold to me. But like I
Mm.
say, maybe a product of it being adapted from a book.
Yeah, I
Perhaps.
think probably most likely. Yeah.
Mm. I also think that kid playing Vito, he looks way more like Robert De Niro than he looks Marlon Brando. He
Yeah,
he he does look like De Niro. He looks nothing like Brando. De Niro and Brando look nothing alike as well, might I
they
add.
they don't. And like also, you know that Marlon Brando used to have these things in his mouth when he played Vito Corleone
Yeah,
to bring
yeah,
his jaw out a bit more.
yeah.
Yeah, and I don't. I think I need to maybe go back and check. But does De Niro use anything like that? He
No, no,
does
I
look a
don't.
little bit out, maybe his jaw, but
But that's just his face, isn't it?
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Although I had, speaking of his face, there are a few moments in the film where he does that kind of like smile, that upside down smile. You know what I'm talking about? The kind
Hmm.
of De Niro way kind of shrugs and his you know what I mean? Upside down
Yeah,
smile.
yeah.
And he,
The sort of like, yeah, the sort of nod of agreement that he does, but it can also mean a plethora of other things.
yeah, and
It's just, yeah, it's just De Niro's face. Yeah.
yeah, it's funny to see that he had that even back then. It's just stuck with him all these years in
Yeah.
his career.
I mean, look, a face is something that's difficult to get rid of, but he's made a whole career out of keeping that face. I mean, look, that mole on his face, he's kept that from the beginning.
Can we talk a little bit about them actually, De Niro and Al Pacino? Because there's a couple of things that I was thinking about recently.
Yeah, go on,
Like,
let's go.
when I was like trying to find the film to watch, 'cause I have it on DVD, but I thought it's gonna be a pain in the ass to get the DVD player to work again. So I thought, okay, I'll try and find it online. And I saw this one comment that was actually kind of interesting. This guy was saying that how the performances changed over time between Pacino and De Niro. Like
Mm.
how this guy was, he at least it was his opinion that Pacino was very wooden, whilst De Niro had a bit more, I don't know, a bit more energetic. And then over time, they kind of swapped, and Pacino became more energetic. For example, like in Scarface, I think that's probably one of his most
I mean,
energetic roles. Whilst De Niro seems to be more, I don't know, gradually,
reserved.
yeah. An interesting comment. I'm not sure I completely agree with it, but I thought it was an interesting thing
I, I
to
mean, I
say.
feel like this person hasn't seen Dog Day Afternoon. I mean, that's such an energetic performance from Pacino, and I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure that came out before the second Godfather film. I could be wrong. After the first one, before the second one, I could be wrong about that. But It was pretty early in his career doing Dog. He was very young in that movie. And
Mm.
Serpico as well. I
Oh,
mean, I can't.
Serpico, yeah, that's very
Serp,
Pacino.
yeah, like it's very like a very flamboyant Pacino. So I'm not sure I agree with that, but I kind of get maybe sort of older as they've gotten much older. De Niro has been more reserved. He's more comfortable. Like
Mm.
he's always playing characters that look cozy. They look comfortable. Oh, I'm the angry CIA dad to Ben Stiller, but it's a comfortable job. It's comfortable. I've got a cat. Do you know what I mean? Like he never seems like very stretched anymore. Whereas
Yeah.
sometimes Pacino rocks up in something, and I'm like, you know what? He's still giving everything. He's still giving as much as he always did. He just might not have as much as he used to. But
Mm.
yeah, I think Pacino gives a lot to a role. I've consistently liked Pacino in everything I've seen him in. De Niro sometimes is a bit hit and miss with me. Sometimes he gives a performance that I'm like, oh, what was that? I don't know if you've seen Hide and Seek, but it's a
No, I
waste.
haven't seen that.
It is a waste of time. We are not watching that for the podcast. I tell you that. That is not happening. It's dreadful. Not worth watching. It's a
You
horror
know,
film. Let's not
yeah.
do.
I was also thinking about, like, for example, I think The Godfather definitely made Pacino. Before that, I don't
Hmm.
think Pacino was very well known at all. And I think, although I need to look at Robert De Niro's career beforehand to see like his filmography on Wikipedia, and he was in a few things before then, before The Godfather Part Two. But I think there are kind of some small roles. He did win a few awards, maybe here and there, but they're more independent. But I think really,
Hmm.
The Godfather Part Two cemented him. He is now like a Hollywood icon. Like at that point, that
Hmm.
was probably his breakthrough role. So I think of it as like Godfather made Pacino and Godfather Part Two made De Niro. What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Well, I think that's a very fair observation to make. I think a lot of people have said it before too. And I think it's also interesting to point out that they never share screen time. These two
Yeah.
great actors in this movie never share screen
And,
time.
and you know what else? I have to tell you this as well. So when I was looking for The Godfather Part Two, I first checked on Netflix and it wasn't there. But you know what did
Oh,
come up?
go on.
Heat. So I ended up,
Ah,
yeah. So by accident, I ended up watching Heat, which I hadn't seen either, and that was quite interesting. I was thinking, so in The Godfather, they're never in the same place, but here they are in the same place together, and it was
but
very
just one scene though. Only
no
one
two
scene.
two scenes, two scenes. There's
Oh,
one
is it
scene where
two?
there's one scene where they meet up and they go to have a coffee with each other, and they've
Yeah,
kind of
that's the
a
scene I'm thinking
conversation.
of.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then there's at the end where Pacino kills De Niro.
yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Well, as I say, that is one of the greatest masterclass of acting in a single scene that you'll ever get to see. The dialogue isn't great, but those two guys are acting the shit out of that scene. They are
yeah.
going for it. It's like they're making each other even better. And what? So that's Heat was what, 20 years, 25 years after
20
Godfather.
something years later, yeah.
So it took 20 years to get these guys in a scene together. Crazy,
Yeah, it's
crazy.
quite, yeah, it's very weird to think about. Also
Mm,
something else about Heat. Heat is one of the films I think that got me into film, actually, because I remember when I was a kid, it was on TV, and well, it was near the end actually. I remember the stuff happening around the airport. My dad was watching it as well, and he was talking about Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and I didn't know who they were because I was only a kid at the time. So how
mm.
do you not know who Robert De Niro and Al Pacino are? And I think I kind of at that point I started to see, oh, my dad really likes film. He knows a lot about film, so I looked up to him, and I wanted maybe that inspired my interest in film to want to know more about it because of that moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice, nice. Well, I mean, my dad always showed me films. I don't really have a defining moment that got me into films. I wish I did now. That would have been, oh, I'm jealous of your moment with your dad. I'm really jealous. Oh, yeah, no, I don't have a moment like that. I just always watched films. I mean, my dad always watched films, but like I say, he's a massive Pacino nerd. He loves his Pacino. Pacino can do no wrong. And, I'm prone to agree with him, if I'm honest. But
Mm.
maybe I've just inherited that from him. Not many people our age, Craig, watch these kind of films. Not many. So,
Yeah, it's a shame they're
well, at
missing
least the
a lot of
ones I
things.
meet. I mean, when we were when we were doing film together, there was so many people in our film class that hadn't watched movies that literally like blew our minds that they could be
Mm.
studying film and they'd never even heard of some of these films. Like, it was shocking to us. But then again, it's kind of shocking. I'd never seen Godfather Part 2
Yeah,
before 2 days ago. So,
yeah.
uh, kind of
But
mental.
I think when you watch older films, it puts a lot of things into context for you when you watch modern films.
Mm,
Because you start to piece together, why is that done in a certain way? And you see, because this or that or this happened. And like when you know the history, it makes it actually more interesting to watch, in my opinion. You
yeah.
get more out of it when you know a bit of history.
Well, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people are sort of split on that new Quentin film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I think if you know the
Yeah,
history,
that's a film
you won't be,
for
it won't be so divisive.
yeah, that's a film for film nerds, I think, a little
Yeah.
bit, isn't it? Yeah.
Or at least people that are interested in like the sort of Hollywood system, in that era. Obviously there's a lot of cool story, and we know that Quentin is a massive fan of it. There's a
Mm.
lot of stories out there. So yeah, if you're a fan of that era, it's a love letter for you. But if you don't know much about it, it might go over your head. I'm sure there were people who were like, "Who's Bruce Lee?" Which to me is just
Oh,
heresy to even for even that sentence to come out of my mouth. But I'm sure there were people that watched that film who didn't know who Bruce Lee was because they're just not they weren't what they're watching movies from that era. They're not interested in the sort of history of Hollywood in that era or at all. Um, but for people like us, it's interesting stuff.
mm.
Sometimes boring, but usually interesting. You know,
Yeah.
so it is what it is. It is what it is. But I think Quentin made it really exciting. But this is it. You needed to know a lot for the movie to not go over your head. So I think you're right. I think even with modern films that try and do it, historical context is important.
Should we get back to The
Oh,
Godfather?
yeah,
To
let's do Godfather. Let's do
Yeah.
Godfather.
Do you want to
Um,
continue with some of your notes?
well, look, so we talked about the opening scene, but then we
Yeah.
get into the present day or Michael's story at
I
least,
think
and we're at
1958, wasn't it? Or was it
58,
a
I
bit?
believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. I only wrote down 1917 for the first De Niro flashback. I haven't got any more dates written down, so.
Uh-huh.
Um, Oh, I was quite surprised. So the opening scene, we have like that American dude, the senator, I think he was, trying to put the
Hmm.
squeeze on Pacino, and you already can tell that it's a mistake. Like, but then there's like, is there a party going on? Like, I I've always wanted to be sophisticated enough to throw one of these gangster parties. That I love the way they, you come to me on my daughter's wedding. And I know that's Brando, but like these parties that are held by gangsters are fucking great looking. But I was surprised to find out that it's a 7 year time jump. I didn't know that. I thought the second film was going to be a direct sequel to the first.
Nah, nah.
So I was surprised. 7
Yeah.
years, I didn't know.
Because
So yeah.
when we first start seeing Michael's timeline, it starts with his son Anthony, I think, doing communion. So, and by the beginning of the first film, he's being at the end of the first film, I think he's been baptized. So you know that he's gone
Mm,
from a baby to now like I don't know 7, 8 year old kid. So there is
yeah.
that. Yeah, I think that's kind of supposed to be a bit of a indicator of how much time has passed between the two films.
Mm, interesting. Yeah. Well, but this is it. I was surprised. I really didn't think that there would be a big time jump. I mean, we find that out quite early on that it's 7 years. But yeah, I think I was just under the impression it was a direct
Yeah,
sequel.
yeah,
Um, but either way, again, that's another thing that makes me think: is this movie even necessary? We've jumped 7 years ahead, so You know, that's 7 years of stories that I bet were going to be interesting.
Mm. Oh, can we also talk about that what's his name? The senator. I forgot what his name was. He
Yeah,
must
I've
have
no idea.
known that he was being played, right? At some point. Because like when he gets when the guys come, say, "Oh, we're gonna help you," and he's in the brothel, and that prostitute has been murdered, and he's covered in blood. It's like, I don't remember. And then later on, obviously, he's now 100%. Like in the later scenes, he's in Michael's pocket, 100%. They go to
Hmm.
Cuba. He helps him up in the hearing, and like
Well,
like
but that they
he
caught him doing some degenerate stuff, and so they
true,
had that over him. But like at the beginning, I felt like he was the one thinking he was in control,
yeah,
and but we as the audience know he is not in control. Like you look at Pacino's face, and it's like, oh, he is in complete control of this situation. You
mm,
know, I mean, like some of the death stares that he's giving out at this party. You know, like it's only the beginning of the movie, and we've already seen the Pacino like proper looking down people. And it's subtle as well, but he's just constantly looking at people like, I'm gonna murder all of you. I love it. I love it. But yeah, yeah, I think the senator, because the senator was kind of racist, wasn't he? I seem
yeah.
to
He didn't like
remember, like
Italians.
didn't like Italians, and yeah, so like he's
Come in
being
here
tough.
with your greasy hair.
Well, this he thinks he's untouchable because he's not part of the criminal syndicate. He's part of politics, so he thinks he's untouchable. And you know, he finds out very quickly, actually, you're not. You're not at all. You know, I love it when Robert Duvall catches him with with the dead girl, and he's like,
Mm,
You're lucky that we know the owner. You're very
yeah,
lucky. We'll make it disappear." And then he starts explaining himself, and Duvall's like, "Chill, man. It doesn't matter. You're in our pocket now, so
yeah,
we'll make it go away." Like, I love it. I loved how Duvall approached him. Can we speak about Robert Duvall in this movie?
yeah. God,
He's brilliant, isn't he? Just so good in
yeah.
this movie. I
I
love Robert Duvall, and I feel that because I've said I prefer the original movie, and I think this movie severely lacks the presence of Brando and James Caan. They are so
mhm.
two of my favorite actors of all time. And Duvall, he's my nicotine patch for James Caan and Marlon Brando. I love Robert Duvall in this.
See, I
He's so good.
rewatching it, I didn't realize how much smaller his role was in the second film. I think he has a bit of
Yeah,
a larger role. He has bit more of a chance to spread his wings a bit in the first film, and this film it
yeah.
feels a bit more like he's a bit more restrained. He doesn't have many opportunities to.
Well, he literally becomes the Don for a portion of the movie. Like he gets
Yeah,
promoted to
true.
boss. He's
Acting
the
boss.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like Pacino has to go and do his own thing. But yeah, like Robert Duvall gets given the job as boss. So, you know, we get to see him flex a bit. I really like Duvall in this movie. He's so composed. And I
Mm,
feel like whenever he's around, it's all going to be okay for the Corleones because you've got Robert Duvall. Like he knows exactly what you all need to do. He should be running the show. Like he knows everything. Yeah, yeah, I loved him. Robert Duvall is the Don. Yeah, because he gets that pretty early on, doesn't he? It's pretty early on that he gets the promotion.
mm. You know what? Can we, because we only have about maybe 20 minutes till this is an hour long. Do you want to
Yes.
talk about the problems of the film? Because I've got a list of things I'm like not sure about, and I'm wondering, do you want to go through them?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Let's quick fire. Let's do a quick fire round of why Craig thinks Godfather is shit.
No, it's not that. It's
No, that's out there now, Craig.
yeah,
That's
that
out there
is
now.
out there.
You may as well just commit to it now. So
I may as
you
well.
tell us and the listeners why is it that you think Godfather 2 is shit?
So, so there are some things that I'm like, I don't think really make too much sense. Uh, the two things that happen in the film, both in Vito's timeline and Michael's timeline, both
Hmm.
of them seem to somehow figure something out that you don't ever see. And you're like, how do they know that? Like, for example, with Michael, it's a bit more annoying, I think, because how does Michael know that Hyman Roth is the bad guy? Like, he just
Well,
seems to have a meeting with him and he gets a feeling. And I feel that's not enough evidence. Like, if I was Michael, I would need like solid evidence that Hyman Roth
well,
is
of
trying to fuck
course.
me.
Of course, and I was going to get into this later, but like there are some scenes where I feel like they're building paranoia and they're building tension, and sometimes it just doesn't seem to lead to anything, and it's and like sometimes I found it a bit jarring. Like do you recall the deal that they make in Cuba, and
Mm.
there's a cake being passed around, and the focus that the camera had on this fucking cake, it's like, is someone going to jump out of the cake and kill everyone? Is the cake poisoned? Like, I was having all these, and then it just came to nothing. And it's like, you made such a big deal, like, and the tension, like, it just keeps getting built, more and more. And I think I think on first watch, I've only watched it the one time, and I felt like on the first watch, I'm like, I'm not loving, like you say, I'm seeing it as a problem that Pacino is sort of jumping to conclusions and all this.
Hmm.
But in hindsight, I do think that this is all just lending to the paranoia of Michael. Like, the paranoia is being felt through the audience as well. Like, we
Hmm.
don't know what's going on. Even we are like struggling to keep track of who's betraying who. Like, you had that other guy. What was his name? The other dude, the guy that grasses him up. I forget his name. Angeli or something. His name was, and he was like
Oh,
another.
Frank
He,
Pentangeli.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, Pentangeli. So like he's running the New York Corleones, right? So
yeah.
like, so he, um, so obviously like we find out that Roth set up his failed assassination attempt, but when you're watching it the first time, you believe that Michael set him up because they don't tell you anything else. They just let you see Michael Corleone says hello, and then they try and kill him.
Yeah. So
So
this scene, I was like, what is going on here? This
right,
is one of my most problematic scenes of the whole film. Why did they do it like that? Because what really makes it confusing, in my opinion, is one of the Risotto brothers, I think,
yeah,
gets a gun out when that policeman comes, and then they all just charge him out of the room.
and then they
And
book him
yeah, and then there's a gunfight on the streets, and I'm a bit um.
because
So what?
Roth. So we
Yeah,
find out that Roth set that up, and it's like, how could you set that up? Like,
yeah,
it's
too
too
complicated.
complicated for that to have been the plan, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's yeah, I had the same issue. I had the same issue because when they reveal it, I'm like, so hang on, so it was all planned, and that doesn't make sense to me
Yeah.
anyway. Like, but again, perhaps it's just there to build that paranoia because, like, I'm thinking maybe they're trying to make us as on edge as Michael is at this point of the film. So we don't
Mm.
know who to trust. We, as the audience, are confused as to who is playing who. But by the end of the movie, we realize Michael is just the chess master. He knows how everyone plays. Although it's shocking to me that he didn't figure Fredo out sooner.
Yeah.
Fredo's a little bitch, isn't he?
Yeah. But at least with
Fredo's a
Fredo,
little bitch.
but at least it feels more natural how he figures out that it's Fredo because there are pieces of information that he hears here and there.
Yeah.
Like, for example, at first, Fredo is pretending, "Oh, I never met Johnny Ola. Yeah, I don't know him. Whatever." And
Mm.
then they're in Cuba and it's, "Oh yeah, we come with me, Frankie. Sorry, Johnny Ola showed me this place. Yeah, yeah, yeah." And he's like, you can see Michael. He's like listening
Yeah.
and his brother being stupid.
The,
By the
the
way, the
the
guy
sort
who
of look
plays,
that Pacino gives, oh, that sort of look of like, oh, it's you. It's like,
yeah,
oh, yeah, go
that
on.
the actor who plays Johnny Ola, it went on to go in The Sopranos. By the way, he plays Uncle Junior. He's one of the main
Oh,
characters. Yeah.
and we could have gone this whole podcast without mentioning that I haven't seen The Sopranos. We could
Oh my
have,
God.
but you couldn't even get through an hour of the podcast before mentioning that. Yes, humble listeners, I have not seen The Sopranos, but I'm getting round to it. It's just bloody long. So give me time. Give me time. I'll get there.
When
I
you're in your
will get there.
60s, maybe.
Maybe. But then I'll have to watch The Wire.
Yeah. Can I also say a couple other things as well, more in Vito's timeline? So Vito, as we know, he's a boy uh, at the beginning of the film, and his brother and his father are killed, and then the mafia,
Mhm.
Costa Nostra, whatever you want to call it, they want to kill him, and he has to escape to America, right? So
Yes.
why, when he's an adult and he's with his friend, I think it's Tessio, I'm not sure, does he have to be told about the Black Hand when we first see Fanucci? And it feels
Because
like
because we're
he,
watching.
yeah,
That's why.
it's just a bit, but it's pointless exposition.
Yeah.
Like, it just feels a bit silly. Like I think you can kind of guess, oh, that's a mafia guy.
Yeah.
You could have done it in another way, a bit of a smarter way.
Hmm. For
Because it
sure.
seemed as if like Vito just completely forgot about his childhood, and that's another thing I have a bit of a problem with Vito is that he's too innocent, and I don't feel that's real. Like he's just too good and nice. He has that feel about him, right? And this is annoys me because it plays into this kind of idea that back in the old days, criminals were gentlemen. This kind
Yeah.
of like they had some morals and stuff,
Well,
and then in the today,
yeah.
no, they don't have that, and that really bugs me because I think that's bullshit. To be honest.
Well, there's this certain romanticism about classic gangsters, right? There's this romanticism that we have, and I think this is why I'm not a huge fan because it sort of glorifies it in a way that makes it feel kind of like fiction. It doesn't feel real. It's so larger than life. I think British gangster films, like, they feel grounded, they feel real, they feel like they could happen. A lot of these like American gangster films I watch, it feels like, pulpy, you know not it doesn't it feels too large. It feels larger than life. It feels like extended reality. We know that people were like this. Like, I think the Capone gang was the most sort of name-worthy real gangster, that was this romanticized idea of a gangster. But I've only watched movies about it and it still doesn't feel real, even though I know Capone was real. Like, it doesn't feel real. It feels make believe. It feels fairy tale because of this romanticism for it, I guess.
Mm,
um and yeah, maybe that's why I'm not a huge fan of American gangster stuff. This is why I haven't seen The Sopranos. you know I'm sort of that's the sort of mindset I have with it. And it's why I've waited till now to watch The Godfather Part 2, I guess.
yeah. And you know what else as well? So, and then like you have this whole bit. So, like with Michael, you had about he knows Roth is the bad guy. But with
Yeah.
Vito, his moment of like somehow knowing something is when he manages to kill Fanucci, which I felt, well, maybe now thinking about it, I think he was following him from the roof of a building, but he seemed to know where he would like. It seemed too well planned, like how he was found where he lived and got like was at the right time and right place and everything. It just seemed a bit, for me, a bit funny. I don't know.
Mm.
And like he even had to be coaxed into becoming a bad guy. Like when I think it's Clemenza who takes him to this house to steal a rug, and oh yeah, it's my friend's place. Yeah, it's okay, just take
Yeah.
it. Uh, and I don't know. I have some real problems with that because I really think that um, for me, I think Vito should have been a bit more open to criminality.
Well,
If that is
well,
that a word, criminality? You
well,
know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah. Well, this is it. He's like your friendly neighborhood gangster, whereas Pacino is like a gangster. He's not friendly. By the end of The Godfather 2, Pacino ain't friendly. Like, he went from being the purest out of the family to the worst of all of them. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? But yeah, like, Brando was sort of like your friendly neighborhood gangster. You know, uh, Everyone liked him. He looked after the community. You know what I mean? He was one of those kind of gangsters. He looked after the people that lived under his reign, and he'd sort people out if you asked him, as long as you do him a favor. Do him a favor, scratch him, he'll scratch you, and there was honor among that. And then obviously in the first movie, they get into the drug industry, and Vito really didn't want to do that. Vito thought that was beneath the family. He's like, no, we can't be doing drugs. They'll sell it to kids or something, like all this. So Vito wanted to veto that, but they went through with it eventually. And so obviously when we come into The Godfather Part 2, it's been 7 years Pacino running the business, and it's now a drug empire. So it's already darker. There was some honor amongst it, and it feels like the second film they're trying to keep hold of that honor, but it keeps getting dragged away from them. Pacino's too paranoid to run the business, but he's ambitious, so the business is getting better. They keep making money, they keep branching out to bigger and better things.
Into gambling.
Into the gambling. I mean, you look at Cuba, like Roth was saying about Roth's plan is basically to turn a city in Cuba into a giant casino. He wants to make Las Vegas, and it could be a base of operations for Pacino's criminality. So he's branching out. He's branching out, but he's not making the business more legitimate. He's just making the business appear more legitimate. But he promised Diane Keaton, the business will be legitimate within 5 years. And we see that he has no intention of making the business legitimate. It's just the appearance of legitimacy. I mean, there's even a bit, I wrote it down here, where his kid says to him, oh, when you do this, when you work, I wish I could help you out. And he's like, you will one day. He's like, one day you will help me out. You'll be running the show. So it's like he makes it very clear to his kid, he has zero intention of getting out of the business or making the business more legitimate. It's just about the empire. So we know that him and Diane Keaton are doomed from the outset of this movie. We knew it from the ending of the first movie. This is why this movie wasn't necessary. We knew all of this was going to happen. You know what I mean? Anyway, but it's fun watching it. It is fun watching it. I hate Fredo. It's a great performance, but he's such a fucking snake. I hate him. He's a perfectly written character. He's just such a little dweeby weasel. I hate him.
He's become an archetype now in some shows, I think. I'm watching Succession. Have you heard of this?
No.
There's a character, actually, funny enough, he's also the middle brother. Fredo is the middle brother of the Corleone family. And this character, I forget, Roman is his name. He's the middle brother in this family. And they seem, not completely the same. This guy is a bit more ballsy in some ways, a bit, but there's a similar feeling about them, a bit sleazy, a bit dishonest, looking out for themselves a little bit, and a bit stupid. And it's interesting. I think that became an archetype after Fredo set that up in The Godfather Part 2. A little bit already in the first one, but yeah, definitely in the second film, definitely.
Yeah.
By the way, so we're like 53 minutes in.
Do you think indeed.
Maybe should we wrap this up? Maybe, I don't know. Should we try to formulate some kind of conclusion on our thoughts of Godfather Part 2?
I mean, we still have so much of the movie to discuss.
We have a lot, yeah.
There's so much, and I want to surprise you with a little segment in our first episode. All right, so let's call this half time.
Shrapnel.